It started with a whisper. Not the one you hear from the other side of the room, but the one that seeps into your mind when you are by yourself, questioning if all that you believed was a deception. The Brown family had long been on television, at least an emblem of togetherness in adversity. Grins around the dinner table, outings as a family, a show of solidarity in the face of adversity. But beneath the surface, cracks. Hairline cracks that, with enough stress, were set to snap wide apart. And in the middle of it all, Robyn, she wasn't a first wife. But she became the favorite in a snap. At least, so it seemed. Kody's focus, his time, his money, everything seemed to go her way. The others picked up on it. Christine felt it when her calls to Kody were ignored for days. Janelle saw it when the plans were canceled. Mary? She no longer figured in the picture. But Robyn, eternally courteous, eternally composed, retained that calm smile. In front of the camera, she'd angle her head, purify her tone, and speak of family harmony. Off camera, however, that was where the true tale started. The first sign came in a conversation overheard by Christine. Late one evening, when most of the house had gone quiet. Robyn's voice was low, steady, but edged with something sharp. She wasn't talking like a wife who wanted unity. She was talking like someone strategizing. Someone planning. Kody doesn't need to worry about them, Robyn said. I'll take care of it. Take care of what? No one knew yet. But that phrase stuck in Christine's mind like a splinter. And that's the thing about splinters. You can ignore them for a while, but eventually they'll dig deeper until you have no choice but to deal with the pain. The second indicator arrived a few weeks later. A financial report intended for all the wives ended up on Janelle's desk. She glanced at it half-heartedly at first, until the figures started to register. Properties moved into various names. Accounts consolidated for convenience. On paper, it was all above board. But the net effect? A subtle incremental shift of power. And at the end of that funnel, Robyn, was it legal? Possibly. Was it equitable? Not even remotely. The true kicker was when Kody began to repeat her phrases in family gatherings. Things she'd said in the comfort of their own home, clever little notions no one else could recall talking about, were now told as if they were his own. It wasn't influence, it was control. Control of his mind. Control of his decisions. Control of the family's destiny. But the thing is, control isn't something that just happens. It's constructed, brick by brick, over time. And Robyn? She'd been building those bricks for years. With a smile, with patience, with deliberate charm. You know who the most frightening person in the room is sometimes? It's not the person yelling, it's the person sitting quietly, observing, waiting for the perfect moment to make their move. When she finally challenged her, it wasn't the shouting match you'd think. It was sneaky, controlled. She asked Robyn if she was making decisions without the others. Robyn didn't say no. She just smiled and said, "Someone has to keep things from falling apart." That's when Christine knew. This wasn't about keeping the family together. This was about shrinking it down into something smaller, tighter, something that Robyn could control entirely. And once that seed has planted itself in your head, you can't look away. You begin to see the patterns. The way Kody increasingly spends less time with anyone else. The way discussions about the future of the family now occur within the walls of Robyn's house. The way key decisions, financial, emotional, even spiritual, are always in lockstep with her passions. But the most terrifying aspect? The others had no idea how far it already was. It's one thing to lose power in a marriage. It's another to lose your whole voice in a family you built from scratch. And yet, each day that's precisely what was occurring. Some of them tried to fight back. At first, Janelle asked questions. Christine raised concerns. Mary? Well, Mary had already been sidelined for so long. Her words barely landed anymore. But every pushback was met with the same calm, infuriating reply from Robyn. I'm just doing what's best for everyone. The second you begin to think that what's best for everyone is something only you can determine, you've stepped over a line you can't step back from. Now here's where it gets even more disturbing. There are whispers, rumors from people who are close to the family that Robyn's power isn't just about the present day. She's thinking ahead. For a life in which the family, as it was, no longer exists. And Kody, either he's in on it, or he's utterly blind. Neither possibility is healthy. Because if it's the former, then it means he's knowingly allowing her to dominate. If it's the latter, then it means she's playing such a sly, so complicated game that the man whose life is being manipulated by it doesn't even know he's just another pawn on the board. But here's the question that keeps me lying awake at night. If Robyn truly is behind it all, what's the game plan? Is it for money, power, legacy, or perhaps something more? Something on a personal level that we can't quite perceive yet. Whatever the motivator is, the game pieces are moving quickly. And if the rest of the Browns aren't aware of the checkmate approaching, they may end up standing outside the castle walls, locked out forever. Sometimes the scariest battles aren't fought in courtrooms or in public. They're fought behind closed doors, over coffee with a smile. And that's exactly why we're going to dig into this story. We're not just going to talk about what Robyn's doing. We're going to unravel how she did it, step by calculated step, and the moments where the rest of the family might have stopped it, if only they'd realized in time. Before we get started, I have to ask, do you think Robyn is just misunderstood, or is she playing a game for complete control? Leave your theories in the comments, because by the time we're finished, you may look at her differently than ever before. Christine sat in her kitchen, the quiet clink of a spoon against a mug breaking the early morning silence. The aroma of coffee wafted through the air, blending with the slight crispness that always hung in Flagstaff just before dawn. She had been awake at 5 a.m., not because she couldn't sleep, but because the silence of late had become her companion. In the silence, she was able to think, and thinking was something she had been steering clear of for years. Her phone vibrated on the counter, its screen flashing an unfamiliar name after too long. An old friend from Utah. She smiled weakly, her fingers dancing over the surface but not responding. Not yet. Instead, she gazed through the kitchen window at the mountains, their tops tinged with the first light of morning. There was a beauty in the world she'd forgotten, one she was only just now relearning. For years, Christine's existence was all about one man and one messy family. All the decisions, all the holidays, all the plans had passed through the filter of Kody's approval. But now, there was just her. The independence was unsettling, almost unfamiliar, like a new pair of shoes that hadn't been broken in. But it belonged to her, and that was everything. She considered the small things she'd resumed, cooking her favorite foods without concern as to whether anyone else would enjoy them, playing music at full volume, driving for miles with no particular place to go, even laughing, true, deep, unmitigated laughter, the kind she hadn't heard from herself in years. And yet, beneath all that, something remained unspoken, something she wasn't quite prepared to share with anyone yet. Sometimes the true story isn't in what someone says, it's in what they don't say. Later that morning, Christine packed a little bag and put on her sunglasses. She lied to herself that it was just a quick getaway to clear her head, but inside she knew better. She had promised herself something, and it was time to keep it. The trip out of Flagstaff was hushed, the desert plains sweeping endlessly on both sides of the road. Miles passed, and so did the memories. Birthdays celebrated, family dinners, fights, sobbing at midnight, children's laughter echoing in the yard, resentments unspoken. And one night she knew everything would never be the same. She stopped for a rest stop, and got out into the hot Arizona air. In the distance, she saw a train making its way along the horizon. She stood there for a moment, hypnotized by its slow, relentless pace. That was how she wanted her life to go now. Keep moving forward regardless. Christine grasped inside her bag, extracting a crumpled sheet of paper. The writing was sloppy but recognizable, hers. She had penned the letter months earlier, when she had felt adrift. It simply said, "Find your happiness. No matter where it is, no matter who doesn't understand. The moment you decide to stop asking for permission to live your life, that's when everything changes." She folded the letter over again, and put it away in her bag. Then taking a deep breath, she climbed back into the car, and turned on the engine. The journey ahead was lengthy, but this time she wasn't fleeing. She was moving towards something, even though she wasn't sure what that was yet. The farther she drove, the more the landscape transformed. The towering pines of Flagstaff receded into the wide open plains of the desert, and with each mile she drove, she felt an intangible weight slip from her shoulders. But along with that freedom came something else. A strengthening sense of anticipation she could not quite explain. She wasn't going anywhere in particular. She was returning. Returning to a place she hadn't visited in more than 2 decades. Returning to a time when things had been uncomplicated, before cameras, before contracts, before the complicated web of plural marriage had dictated every choice she made. The little town seemed like a mirage in the distance. One gas station, a line of weathered stores, and a diner that looked just the way it had when she last came through. Christine parked outside the diner, her heart pounding. Inside, it was thick with the scent of fried bacon and pungent coffee. The waitress looked up, smiled obligingly, then double-taked. Christine recognized that gaze. Recognition. The woman, however, didn't say anything, just took her to a booth near the window. Christine had ordered coffee, and sat quietly, her eyes darting to the door every time it swung open. She was waiting for someone. Someone she had not mentioned to anyone. A quarter of an hour passed before he appeared. Tall, with silver hair and a smile that could melt even the hardest of hearts. His eyes met hers in an instant, and all at once, the years seemed to fade away. He glided into the booth across from her, and neither of them said a word for a second. "It's been a while," he finally murmured, his voice low, almost guarded. Christine nodded, her hands shaking a little, as she wrapped them around the coffee cup. "Too long. The past does catch up with you. And especially so when you've managed to stay ahead of it." They spoke softly at first, dancing around the actual reason she had come. But soon, he leaned in, his voice hardening. "You didn't stop by just for nostalgia, Christine. What's going on?" Her breath caught in her throat. She stared out the window, observing as a gust of wind stirred dust across the parking lot. At last she spoke. I think I have something that can ruin him." The man's brow knit. "You mean Kody?" Christine nodded, speaking in a whisper. "I've kept it secret all these years, but with all that's been going on lately, perhaps it's time." The man didn't alter his expression immediately. He simply sat there, looking at Christine as though attempting to decipher between the lines she was speaking. Eventually he leaned back and folded his arms. "What do we have here? Some stale argument? Something from when you and him were together?" Christine shook her head, her eyes fixed on the table. "No. This is bigger than that. It's something that could change how people see him forever. Not just the family. Everyone." The man exhaled slowly, glancing toward the other end of the diner to make sure no one was listening. "You've been holding this for 20 years. Yes." Her voice was slightly shaky. "Because I thought that it was best to keep the peace. But now I realize what that peace cost me. What it cost us all. Sometimes the truth isn't a spark. It's a wildfire waiting for the right wind." She dipped into her bag and produced a leather-bound book, worn from use. Its edges were torn, the stitching on the binding just keeping it intact. She placed it between them on the table, her hand resting on the cover. The man looked at it warily. "What's inside?" Christine hesitated, her chest rising and falling with deep breaths. "Proof of what Kody did before the cameras ever came around. Proof that he was never who he pretended to be." His brow furrowed. "And you're sure it's true?" Christine's voice hardened. "I lived it." A quiet settled over them. Outside the sun sank lower, stretching long shadows across the floor out the window. The man at last reached out and touched the journal as if it would hurt him. "What do you want me to do?" he asked. Christine looked at him. "I want you to help me determine whether or not the world needs to know." The man looked at her for a long time, then over toward the parking lot. "If you're serious, you're going to need something better than that book. Folks will say it's lies. Or that you're bitter. They'll try to make you the bad guy." Christine's mouth set in a thin line. "Then I'll bring them the one thing they can't dispute. The individual who witnessed it all occur." The man's eyes opened wide. "You don't mean I do." She cut in, her voice on the verge of shaking. "She's still alive. And if I can get her to open up, it's over for him. When the missing piece of the puzzle arrives, the entire picture is rearranged forever." The man leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Then you'd better start looking in a hurry, before he discovers you're looking." Christine nodded, a determined fire in her eyes. She picked up the journal, clutching it to her chest. "I've already started." 3 days later, Christine stood in the dim glow of a gas station parking lot, her phone pressed tightly to her ear. The cold wind whipped strands of hair across her face, but she didn't notice. She'd been calling the same number for hours. Voicemail again. She hung up, her eyes fixed on the cracked screen. "Pick up. Come on," she said under her breath. This woman, the witness, had haunted Christine's mind for so long. The one who'd been there, who'd witnessed the things no one else would even speak of. Finding her wasn't about justice anymore though. Christine could feel the clock running out, and she couldn't help but think she was already being watched. In her vehicle, the passenger seat was covered in receipts, maps, and the worn leather journal. She opened it to a page where a folded photograph marked its surface. It was a picture decades old, an out-of-focus photo of a dark-haired young woman smiling, standing just behind Kody. Her name was Marlene, and if Marlene spoke, Kody's well-crafted empire would shatter like glass. Some names don't just open doors, they blow them off the hinges. That evening, Christine stayed at a low-rent roadside motel, the kind that had a flickering neon sign and paper-thin walls. She got very little sleep. Each noise, a car door closing, footsteps down the hallway, gave her a jolt of fear. By dawn, she was driving again, tracing the path of an old address she'd discovered hidden in the pages of the journal. With the passing miles, memories intruded, ones she'd devoted years to hiding. She recalled that night Marlene vanished from their lives. There had been yelling, the sort that can make your stomach twist. She recalled Kody's voice, low and icy, uttering something she was not supposed to hear. No one will believe her anyway. Christine's hand on the steering wheel, clenched until her knuckles turned white. Hours after that, she drove into a small town with just one major street. The directions brought her to a weathered yellow house, at the end of a dirt road. A mailbox tipped on its side, its paint chipped. Christine sat there for a moment, her heart thudding so loudly it seemed to resound in the car. She stepped down, moving slowly to the porch. The wood groaned beneath her feet. She lifted her hand and knocked. The door opened a sliver, and there she stood. Grayer now, her hair streaked with silver. But those same piercing eyes looked out from behind the opening. "Marlene?" Christine's voice was hardly louder than a whisper. The woman's eyes grew narrow. "Who's asking?" It's Christine hesitated. From the door slammed shut. "Sometimes the truth you're chasing runs faster than you ever imagined." Christine stood immobilized, gaping at the shut door. Then she heard the distant sound of receding footsteps within. She pounded again, harder this time. "Marlene, please. I just need to speak. It has to do with Kody, about what occurred." There was nothing. Then from behind the door, one word: "Leave." Christine's heart fell, but before she could react, a shadow shifted in the periphery of her eye, a figure at the end of the street, observing. When she turned, the shadow moved back into the darkness. The storm. The storm was gone, but its echoes of madness still lingered in every corner of family life. Weeks passed in Flagstaff with a sense of heaviness, not of weather, but of the weight of all that had been said, all that had been done, and all that had been broken. Yet, in the most peculiar manner, those cracks had allowed a little light to come in. Kody had been silent, more than anyone had ever known in years. No yelling, no barking commands, no storming off into rooms, just quiet. Sometimes he would sit on the porch and back, looking out into the Arizona desert, as if on the wind the answers he sought might blow in. And perhaps for once, he was beginning to see that all the combat in the world wouldn't get him the peace he said he sought. Robyn, however, was still wary. She had learned better than to take silence for safety. But there was something in his eyes recently. It wasn't fury. It wasn't even the obstinate pride she was accustomed to. It was contemplation. The kids, feeling the change, began to edge out of their shells. Laughter started to trickle back into the house again in small increments. A joke in here, a meal shared there. The wounds were still raw, but for the first time in a while, no one was tearing them open again. Healing doesn't always start with a big gesture. It starts the moment when the yelling stops. The family made a decision to eat dinner together one Friday evening. No cameras, no guests, no attorneys, just them. Christine brought her famous rolls. Janelle prepared a gigantic salad. And Robyn actually baked a dessert from scratch. There was a stiffness at first. The sort of thing you experience when people have fought so bitterly that they're unsure how to behave, when the war is on hiatus. Aurora was the one who snapped it. She shared an anecdote, about her first day on her new job, having a slip of a customer's name, and mistakenly referring to him as Sir Bananas. The whole table exploded. Even Kody laughed uncontrollably that he needed to rub his eyes. For an instant, they weren't foes. They weren't split. They were just family. In the coming weeks, they started a kind of casual tradition, getting together each Sunday afternoon for coffee and a walk in the park. No heavy discussions about the past. No argumentative debates about the future. Simply walking, simply being. Kody, unexpectedly, started to apologize in tiny ways. He didn't emerge with a big speech. No sweeping, I was wrong monologue. But his behavior started doing the talking. He started arriving early to assist Janelle with her landscaping. He volunteered to repair a dripping faucet at Christine's house. He even phoned Mary one afternoon, just to inquire how her day was going. It's funny how the smallest kindness can feel like the largest breakthrough. On a very hot afternoon, they met at Robyn's backyard for a barbecue. Sprinklers cascaded down on running kids, shrieking with delight, while adults lounged beneath the canopy of the big maple tree. Discussion swerved from gardening advice to vacation fantasies. Kody, glancing at them all as a group, cleared his throat. They all hushed, still reflexed to tense when he spoke. Me neither, he replied slowly, but I can try not to break it again. The sentence wasn't elegant. It wasn't eloquent, but it was real. And in the Brown family, real had been gone for far too long. The months went by, and with each passing one, the weight eased a little more. Christine began hosting game nights. Janelle brought everybody on her camping trips. Robyn started letting her guard down, laughing more easily, speaking more freely. Even Mary, who had frequently been on the outside looking in, started appearing more frequently, and being included. One night, while the sun colored the sky streaks of pink and gold, the family sat down to a humble picnic. They sat in one large circle on blankets, sharing sandwiches and watermelon. Kody, propped on his back, looked up at the sky and sighed. You know, he said, I used to think family meant control, but I think maybe it just means showing up. Christine smiled, took you long enough. They all laughed, and it wasn't bitter laughter. It was warm, forgiving, hopeful. When you finally stop trying to win, you realize you've already had what mattered most. The children started discussing the future. College, traveling, and even some jokes about who would host the family's traditional holiday dinner. When the parents retired, there wasn't a strained atmosphere, a sense of resentment, only gab, food, and the gentle sound of wind blowing through grass. That night, as they packed up to leave, Robyn pulled Kody aside. You've changed, she said. Simply, he didn't argue, didn't deflect. I had to, he replied. They returned to the group, hand in hand. It wasn't a pretty scene. There were still wounds, still reminders of the lowest moments. But there was something else too. A new strength that had come out of living through the storm together, even when they had thought it would have to destroy them. The fairy tale ending wasn't a reunion, but it was better than that. The beginning of a future where no one had to fear the past anymore. And perhaps that was enough. For sometimes the strongest ending is just having the chance to start again. The atmosphere in the Brown home had changed, gently to begin with, as is the prelude to a storm. For weeks following the so-called happy ending, laughter came back, meals were eaten together, and there was a tentative peace. But under the surface, rumors started to circulate. It began with a lost envelope. Robyn discovered it stuck behind the family's antique wooden desk while she was cleaning. It appeared innocuous at first glance, merely a ripped manila envelope. A bit dusty, but when she removed it, her gut nodded. It contained sheets of financial reports, current ones, with Kody's signature. But these were not the family accounts they were all familiar with. These were associated with an entirely different bank. She said nothing at first. She just sat quietly there, gazing at the figures, experiencing that rising characteristic feeling of unease. Was Kody concealing money again? Was this why he'd been away so many nights lately? It's always the tiniest crack that allows the flood to pour in. That evening, during dinner, Robyn was subdued. Christine was the first to notice. Something's wrong, she said softly. Fork hovering in midair, Robyn waved it away with a wan smile. Just tired, but Janelle's eyes had narrowed. She recognized that expression. It was the expression of a person hiding a secret. By the weekend, Robyn couldn't keep it inside. She arranged for a private sit-down with Christine and Janelle when Kody was away on business. She put down the papers on the kitchen table, the figures in black and white before them. Christine's jaw fell. Janelle leaned in, her eyes scanning the fine print. This isn't a side account. Janelle breathed. This is another life. They sat, the heaviness of the revelation weighing like lead in the air. When trust is restored, the breaking is twice as hurtful. The three women argued what to do. Christine sought confrontation, here and now. Janelle cautioned them to wait. They needed more evidence before they accused him once more. Robyn, caught in the tug of fear and loyalty, simply desired to know why. The response came sooner than they could have anticipated. Late one evening, Robyn heard the front door groan. She looked out from behind the hallway shadows and saw Kody slipping in, holding a black leather satchel. He didn't notice her. He went directly to the desk, opened the secret drawer, and put something in there. Then he slipped quietly up the stairs. When he was gone, Robyn tiptoed into the study. Her hands trembled as she opened the drawer. Inside, beneath an old family album, was a thick stack of cash, tens, maybe hundreds of thousands. She backed away slowly, her mind spinning. This wasn't just secret savings. This was something bigger. The truth has a way of demanding to be heard, whether you're ready for it or not. The following day, Kody played it like nothing had occurred. He was affable, easygoing, even planning a family day out. But the women couldn't pretend not to have seen. Each smile tasted of play acting. Each line seemed practiced. At last, Christine snapped. She blocked Kody in the living room, as the others overheard from the kitchen. "Explain this account," she said, her tone glacial. Kody froze, his eyes darting for an escape. "What account?" he asked too quickly. Christine stepped closer. "The one in your name. The one with enough cash to buy a house. The one you've been hiding from us for months." Silence. Then slowly, Kody's lips curled into something between a smirk and a sneer. "You have no idea what you're talking about." But the way his voice shook told them everything. Once a secret is out, there's no shoving it back into the darkness. The argument that began in the living room didn't end there. It burst into flames. Christine's voice escalated, as hard as a knife. "You expect to be able to meet our eyes and lie once more after all we've gone through?" Kody's jaw clenched, his fists flexing at his sides. "You don't get it," he said. "You never get it." From the doorway of the kitchen, Janelle moved forward. "Then tell us. Now, no avoiding. No screaming. Just say what that money is for." Kody glanced at one woman, then the other. For an instant, his face wavered. There was a flash of something very vulnerable, but it was already gone. "It's protection," he said at last, his voice barely above a whisper. "For me, for the future." Christine's eyes narrowed. Protection from what? From us? That stung him. Hard. His nostrils flared. "You've all made it pretty clear you don't trust me anymore. I had to ensure that if you turned on me, if everything collapsed, I wouldn't be left with nothing." The room became quiet. The words hung there like smoke after an explosion. Robyn's heart hurt at the confession, but the pain shifted to anger in an instant. "So rather than working with us, you worked behind our backs and ensured you'd be safe if we were destroyed." Kody gave her a look, half guilty, half fury. "I did what I had to do." Janelle folded her arms. "No, Kody, you did what you wanted to do. And again, you didn't consider anyone except yourself." Kody looked cornered for the first time. His tone increased in volume. Defensiveness. "You don't think I've sacrificed enough for this family? You don't think I deserve some security? I've been holding you all up for years." Christine interrupted. "Keeping us? We've been keeping you together. With every poor choice, every tantrum, every betrayal." The fight escalated. Voices collided, twining together, until Robyn couldn't tolerate it any longer. She pounded her hands on the table, the impact shattering through the pandemonium. Enough, she shouted. Her voice was trembling, but it silenced the room. This isn't about who carried who. This is about trust. And right now, Kody, you've burned what little was left. Kody's breathing was labored. His eyes darted across their faces. Christine's anger, Janelle's disillusionment, Robyn's devastation. For an instant, it almost looked as if he were going to apologize. But instead, he took his jacket, grumbled something, and walked out, slamming the door so violently that the walls shook. The three women stood there in shock. Christine broke the silence. Finally, her tone subdued. Now, he's gone to defend that money. Janelle nodded. And if we don't move quick, he's going to take it and never come back. Robyn, her gaze still on the door, felt reality drop low in her chest. This was no longer about the money. This was about living. And living meant they were going to have to do something none of them had ever thought possible. The night following Kody's tantrum, the house was silent, but it was not calm. Christine didn't sleep at all, pacing the bedroom like a woman waiting for a storm to hit. Janelle had her laptop out at the kitchen table, windows full of property records, bank tracks, and everything she could find that would lead her somewhere Kody might have hidden the money. And Robyn just stood by the window, looking out at the driveway like she was waiting for him to appear at any moment. By morning the women were in the kitchen once more. No coffee, no breakfast, only an uncomfortable thick silence. We can't just sit around and wait for him to make the next move. Christine snapped, breaking it. Janelle's eyes lifted. Then go to him. Robyn paused. You mean, yes. Christine snapped. We find him, we confront him, and we get the truth with evidence this time. It wasn't a plan fueled by strategy, it was fueled by urgency, by the knowledge that Kody could be emptying accounts or signing property transfers right now. By noon they were in Janelle's SUV, driving on a tip she'd cobbled together from a long-forgotten conversation and a suspicious receipt in Kody's jacket pocket. The address took them out of town, winding down back roads, until they came to a stop in front of an old, unmarked storage shed. Christine was the first to catch sight of his truck. He's here, she breathed. Their footsteps were fast but silent, as they made their way across the lot, the odor of dust and oil hanging heavy in the air. Behind them from within came the metallic click of a lock turning over. Christine's pulse rate accelerated. They pushed around the corner. And there he stood. Kody stood stock still when he saw them. A duffel bag slung over his shoulder, its zipper pulled taut over what appeared to be piles of money and folders full of documents. What are you doing here? His tone was bitter, but his eyes betrayed him. He was shaken. Christine advanced. We're here to put a stop to it. You're not leaving with that money. He laughed, but it lacked conviction. This isn't yours. This is mine. I deserve it. Robyn's voice cracked, but it was firm enough to slice through air. You earned it with us. Every cent in that bag is linked to our work, our sacrifices, our family. You can't take that away from you, because you're afraid. For a fleeting moment, Kody's hold on the bag grew stronger. So Janelle stepped nearer, taking out her phone. You're not going to pull this off. If you leave that door, the world will know exactly what you've done. Every deal, every secret account, every secret transaction. I back everything up. His face tightened. You wouldn't. Janelle's response was freezing. Try me. The standoff dragged on, the air heavy with history, betrayal, and something none of them had been willing to say until now. This was the time their family was officially done. At last, Kody took a deep breath. He put the bag down on the pavement. Fine, he said. Take it, but don't think that this makes you superior to me. Christine grabbed the bag, her fingers shaking. It's not about being better. It's about being free. They abandoned him there, alone in the dark storage unit, his shadow stretching out long on the cold concrete. At the house, the three women sat together for hours, the bag in the center of the table between them. There was no jubilation, no release, only a still, shared understanding. Robyn finally spoke. We'll split it evenly, and we'll move forward. No more hiding. No more lies. Janelle nodded. No more Kody. Christine smiled faintly, her voice soft but certain. No more fear. Outside, the evening sun dipped low, casting warm light through the windows. For the first time in months, maybe years, The house didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt safe. And in that tenuous golden peace, they realized the war was finished. Not because they'd conquered Kody, but because they'd claimed themselves.